before we really start. But for everybody who's on right now, I'm Stephanie Nakajima. I'm the Director of Communications at Healthcare Now. We also have Vinay joining us from Center for Popular Democracy. I'm not sure if anyone can see you, actually.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. This is Vinay. Thank you for joining.
Vinay is actually in DC right now. CPD is doing a huge impeachment action, and I really wanted to get the update from him on that. So all you early birds get to hear the down low on that.
Yeah, so I'm in DC. I don't know if you saw on the news, we had a big action today demanding witnesses for the trial, demanding a fair trial. I've been doing turnout for a few days. We were thinking maybe 100 people would come, maybe 200 people. We were kind of worried about it, and I think over 1,000 people came. It was pretty big. I don't know if anyone's been to the Hart Senate office building, but they have a huge atrium, and we just filled the entire atrium, which is very hard to do. I've tried many times and failed before. And we had like a silent protest there because we didn't want anyone to get arrested at that particular moment. So we filled the whole room and just kind of occupied the space to like bear witness to the injustice. And then we moved to the steps of the Capitol building. And that was a huge, very dramatic, great visual march to the Capitol. And we were led by Reverend Barber, who is like one of the great civil rights heroes of our time. I don't know if people are familiar with him. And he gave a speech and some other people spoke. And then we did do arrests. 44 people got arrested on the steps of the Capitol. And yeah, it was great. So then there were some smaller actions after that. And some people are still out there. I can still hear people in the streets. So it's a pretty big moment. We'll see if we were able to pressure any senators to vote the right way. We'll see how it goes.
That's awesome. Yeah, who are the targets right now? Is it Rubio and Collins, and do you have any?
Let me look up the list. 1 second. We went to some offices today. Let me tell you which ones we went to. So today we went to Susan Collins from Maine. She's often a target because she voted our way on the ACA, but has not been supportive since then. We went to Gardner's office, Mitch McConnell's, Toomey, and Lindsey Graham. So a lot of those were just kind of shaming actions, but there were also some targeted outreach to people who could actually switch. We were hearing for a while that the Republicans didn't have the votes to stop witnesses, but now we're hearing that they do. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Collins has really just gone full dark side, I think.
Yeah, she's heartbreaking.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for that update, Vinay. I think maybe we'll just go ahead and get started. So thanks again, everybody, for jumping on. Again, I'm the Director of Communications at Healthcare Now. And a little bit about Healthcare Now. So we were formed in 2004, the year right after the first sort of somewhat complete single-payer bill was ever introduced. That was, of course, John Conyers' HR 676. And we were formed in 2004 as a coalition of labor, community, and faith groups that were committed to actually passing this national legislation. And so today we have active groups all over the country that are building the movement. And we've got a new bill, a new, even more complete bill, HR 1384, to sort of rally around. And I've been personally in this movement since 2015. Actually, I've been in the movement since 2012, but I've been with Healthcare Now since 2015. And I got into this movement because, probably like many of you, I didn't have health insurance for many years. And then when I did get health insurance, it was kind of like shit insurance. And then during the recession, I was having a problem finding employment here in the US. So I moved to Japan, my dad's country, and found out that actually you can just sign up for health insurance in that country. And there was no such thing as having a pre-existing condition. This was before the ACA. And I just realized what a huge weight, there was just a huge weight taken off my shoulder by actually just having guaranteed health insurance that I could never really lose. And after my feelings of relief subsided, I started to feel angry because I realized that I had actually been denied my right to healthcare in the US for so long. And then after that, I met a Dane and we got married and we moved to Denmark. So then I got to experience sort of like the next level of public health insurance, which is, of course, a single payer healthcare system in Denmark. So I decided if I ever had to come back to the United States, it would be to, you know, fuck up the insurance companies. So here I am. And oh, I meant to bring my yellow card. That was my Danish health insurance card. But let's see if I have it here. I don't have it. All right, well, you'll have to visualize. It's a little yellow card. It's like a Medicare for all card. It's like one of my prized possessions, even though I don't even live in Denmark anymore. Anyway, I've personally bird dogged many of my reps, congressional at the Senate and the House level, as well as state reps. And I just love the feeling. I don't know, maybe it's the status in me, but I love the feeling of putting my electeds on the spot and sort of making them sweat a little bit. So I'm really excited about like our webinar tonight and talking about bird dogging as a tactic. All right, so maybe we should get started. Oh, Vinay, can you introduce yourself and Birddog Nation?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Vinay. I'm the National Field Organizer for the Center for Popular Democracy. And I got into this work. I've always been drawn to healthcare advocacy work. I used to work in the HIV field at Housing Works in New York. I do a lot of mental health advocacy too, but more specific to what we're talking about today, I kind of joined this fight when the Republicans were trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which I think was summer 2017 or 2016. And that's kind of when Birddog Nation started. Birddog Nation is a collaboration between the Center for Popular Democracy and Housing Works. And during those ACA repeal fights, we started hitting town halls across the country and eventually built that into a national movement where we started doing sit-ins and civil disobedience in DC. And we like to think we helped influence that victory in protecting the ACA, because the 3 Republican votes were 3 offices that we were in every day. So I started as a protester. I got arrested a couple of times. I did a lot of bird dogging. Then I started doing legal support, and then I came on as staff, and now I'm the National Field Organizer. So I work on our Medicare for All campaign, our opioid network campaign, and lots of the direct actions we do in DC, like the ones I talked about today for the people who came on early. So yeah, we're going to talk a bit about bird dogging, and it's one of the many tools in the advocacy toolbox, and we're going to talk about how you can best employ it.
Great. Thanks so much, Vinay, for being with us. All right, so bird dogging 101. See if I can figure out how to move the slides. Okay. Yeah, so of course our goal is Medicare for all. This webinar is going to focus on bird dogging as a tactic, but I just want to take a step back and talk about where bird dogging fits into our strategy in terms of like actually getting to our goal of Medicare for all. So basically, there's a very narrow path to win Medicare for all. We just have to pass our bills in Congress. That's it. The nature of what we want in this instance, in this particular movement, is a whole new health insurance system. So it's sort of a necessarily legislative process. And I know for those of you like me who really like direct action and everything, you know, it's not you know, a great reality, because I know that there's a lot of other movements where you can pressure different, you know, actors, and you don't have to necessarily pass a bill. But in this case, it's like no bill, no emperor. So how do we pass that bill? Well, we know we don't have the money to compete with the profit-making entities that are going to fight to literally their death. But the day that we pass, and the day that we pass Medicare for all, we're going to be outspent by quite a lot of money. But the day that we pass Medicare for all is the day we also have enough of a different currency. And of course, that currency is people power. So I'm really bad at moving these slides. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, so of course our strategy has to be to build a grassroots movement that can be a counterweight to the massive amounts of money that for example, the Partnership for America's Health Future is going to pour into combating single payer. So how are we building that movement, and where does bird dogging fit in? Well, bird dogging is a tactic. It's not a strategy. And I think we should first talk a little bit about what makes a good tactic. So ultimately, our strength comes from organizations that have broad and deep bases of support, active, committed members who we can count on to help develop and show up for campaigns. And the more members that we have, the more coalition partners that we have, the more pressure we can apply. So in light of that, I think a good tactic is one that has two elements. The first element is that it applies pressure to those who can give you what you want. Or one that builds your power so that when you do go to apply pressure, you have enough power to be effective. So I want some audience participation here for the next part. We're gonna look at a couple, we're gonna think of two tactics and we're gonna assess them based off of these criteria. So the first tactic that I'm gonna throw out there is like educational flyering. Do you think that that makes a good tactic? Or how would it meet these criteria? And hi, everybody. Hi, Dr. Bill. Hi, Lynn. Hey, Randy. Okay, so some people are saying meh. Some people are saying only for raising class consciousness. That's true. Right? Anything else before I jump in? Yeah, so I think that that you're right, Eric, that educational flyering is good for raising class consciousness and education. And I think that in our movement, as new forms of attack are levied at Medicare for All. So for example, like last election cycle, one of the big arguments against Medicare for All was that it was going to lead to rationing. I mean, there was all sorts of like weird kitchen sink arguments that even the left, not just the right, but the left was also throwing at us. And I think in the future, we're going to have to just keep rolling with all these new reasons that, the establishment is going to come up with for why we can't have Medicare for All. I think one of the ones that I've been seeing a lot is like, oh, well, Switzerland does it with a private healthcare system. So we can actually get to universal healthcare without going all the way to Medicare for All. So I definitely think that there's like a bit of inoculation work that needs to happen. But at the same time, I think that ultimately an educational flyer isn't actually going to apply any pressure to those who can give you what you want. It is going to educate people. But remember, we already have, 58% of Americans who support Medicare for All. And if we could actually activate those 58%, then we might be able to pass Medicare for All. So I do think that it could build your power. For example, if you had like an action, I think maybe, yeah, somebody actually said this. Ken, thank you, Ken. And hi, it depends on the ask in the flyer. Absolutely. So like a flyer could have an ask. And I think that that's something that, that makes educational flyering a little bit more effective, but it's a little bit hard to follow up with people you give a flyer. A flyer isn't really like a big commitment. If they take one, you don't really know if they're gonna get back to you. So it's pretty low level in terms of organizing. I can think of one example in which flyering was used to pretty good effect. Here in Massachusetts, we were trying to get a representative on the Medicare for All bill, and we had gone through a process of like working with them behind the scenes and not like really putting a lot of public pressure on them. And they sort of resisted and resisted. And then we told them actually that we were going to flyer every single car in the district. And this was actually, this was a rep district. This would be hard to do with a Senate district, but we were going to go out and flyer every car saying that this representative did not support Medicare for All, and here's his phone number, and call him. And that actually freaked him out. And it really actually caused also like rift in the organization. They were like, is this too confrontational? Do we want to work with him a little bit more? But the end result was that the next day he signed on to the bill. So I think that that's an example of very effective flyering that actually does apply pressure and could ultimately build your power. So, okay, one more. Holding a protest at an insurance company. Would that get us those two criteria? Okay, someone saying pointless. Someone saying yes to one. Only if their office is in a very visible area. Okay, yep, maybe to two. No, they won't change their mind. No, they will watch out their windows and wave. I feel like that's happened to me before. Okay, I think all of these answers are actually, do it around lunchtime. Okay, good. Only if it's on Action News. Exactly. Okay, I like that. I think it can be useful to protest in front of an insurance company if strategic. Would be more effective if the media was alerted. Okay, these are all great answers. This is basically what I wanted to hear. So what makes a good tactic? Does it apply pressure to those who can give you what you want? No, because an insurance company can't give us what we want. We have to go to our legislators because they're the ones who can legislate them out of existence. Does it build your power? That actually, I think maybe it could. Like Diana's saying, if we alert the media, Yuling is saying if it's strategic, if it's something that brings people together and brings more people into the movement, then yeah, it could. But we should be aware of what we're actually achieving with those tactics. Okay, so thank you, everybody. This has been more engaged than I thought. Okay, so with that in mind, now we're gonna talk a little bit about bird dogging and then look again at the tactics criteria and see if it applies. So what is bird dogging? And here I'm just gonna read to you from Move to Amend, their definition. It comes from hunting. That cute little dog is actually a vicious killer. The bird dog's job is to flush the birds out of the bushes and into the open. Politicians are like birds. They try to keep their positions hidden behind vague rhetoric. Using tightly crafted questions, the successful bird dog forces candidates to reveal their position on an issue. Okay, so when we bird dog, we put our elected officials or candidates on the spot, in person, in public, and very importantly, on camera, so that we actually have a video clip of their response that we can use for social media. And it focuses directly on the person with the power to give us what we want at a moment of, easy access and when they're actually looking at us for our support. Cool. So what are the goals of bird dogging? So the purpose of bird dogging, is it just to heckle legislators we don't like? I think that there's two main purposes of bird dogging. We want to get answers on the record by asking the right questions and use those in social media to rally our base, all that kind of stuff for not just social media, but also the actual media. And then two, create movement in legislation by getting the attention of elected officials and pressuring them directly. And not just creating movement, but also creating support or deepening support, as we're going to talk about, and again, letting the media and their constituents know. So going back to what makes a good tactic. So does bird dogging apply pressure to those who can give you what you want? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't switch the slide. You guys missed a lot of slides. I'm sorry. I didn't switch the slide actually on this one. Okay, so now we're back here. So yes, it absolutely does. Is it good for building power? Yes, and yes, that's right. So maybe with building power. So I want to give an example of my local Boston DSA. So Boston DSA went to go bird dog Stephen Lynch about Medicare for All, and they asked him a very pointed question: will you co-sponsor for? And what happened was it ended up being a really funny clip because he was asked the question and then he said, look, if we institute a Medicare for All system, then your private insurance, Aetna, all that stuff, that all goes away. And the whole crowd just like erupted in wild applause. And so it really kind of backfired on him, and it made for this like really shareable clip. And Boston DSA, which at that time had like 100 followers, I mean, it wasn't Boston DSA, it was the Healthcare Working Group of Boston DSA, their Twitter account. And the People for Bernie retweeted it, and the People for Bernie is like this huge group. And so it got 12,000 views, and actually Boston DSA's follower count went up threefold just from that one share. And of course, I think that like just social media likes or something, that's going to get you a little power. It's not going to get you a whole lot of power, though. I think that if, for example, like an organization wanted to use that to actually recruit and build their base, then they probably have to go through, like reach out to every person who liked it, or to who joined or who liked or followed the Twitter account, and try and invite them to like the next bird dogging event or the next Boston DSA thing. I think there's like a lot of work in actually building your power, because you have to like reach out to people a lot and all that stuff, and just having people following you on social media isn't quite enough, but it shows that there's potential to use it as a vehicle for building power. And then of course, another way it could help you build power is if you go to the media. So you have your clip now, and the media loves to use like these organic clips that just come from people's phones, and this could also get some publicity for your organization if it's like featured in news articles. So there are usually like better, more direct ways of building power if that's like your goal, but bird dogging definitely opens up an avenue for it. So it's not as good as like an intentional way of building like relationships with other groups. And let's say like you bird dog your rep and then they say no, like, well, what then? That tactic didn't demonstrate that you have the power to change their position. So your options are, you either have to get more power, or you have to switch to a tactic that does demonstrate your power. So it's important to think about having a campaign of like escalating tactics when you design your strategy to move your rep. And you should also be thinking about like what your group has the power to do and where bird dogging might fit into that. Okay, so next. So why bird dogging and why now? Oh, whoops, sorry. I'm so bad at this. So we're in the primary season, and this is just so great for me, because we've been, for a couple of our reps who are just never come out, never do public appearances, they're being primaried, and all of a sudden they're having to come out and actually defend their office, defend their position. So it's actually a great time to get out there and to try to find your candidates, because they're kind of like sitting ducks right now. Momentum, I mean, it's becoming more and more difficult, of course, to be a Democratic candidate that doesn't support Medicare for All. And I know that there are plenty that still do it, but I think that we have an opening there. There's like a bit of a weakness there, that if you get them on camera saying they don't support it, then it's a little bit, that's gonna put the pressure on them a little bit. And then of course, applicability, like candidates of every party, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, are feeling more and more pressure to account for their campaign donations from special interests like health insurers and pharmaceutical companies. So an example of bird dogging ask that you might choose for like a more conservative rep would be, you've repeatedly said you won't sign on to the Medicare for All bill, but will you pledge not to take any more donations from for-profit insurance companies? And I think that that's going to be the kind of ask that resonates with an audience, even if there may be like a mixed Medicare for All audience there. I think that being bought by companies, bought by special interests is something that people across the political spectrum don't like. So there's definitely like a way, I think, for us to get involved there. Okay, so how do you choose a target? How do I move this slide? Okay. So most of you already like have a candidate in mind, like you already know your congressional rep or senator. Maybe you already know your position on Medicare for All. If you don't, you can go to healthcarenow.org and we'll help you identify your candidates, who your candidates are, and how to find their position on Medicare for All. You can see whether they've co-sponsored the bill, whether they're on the Medicare for All caucus. Actually, to find out if they're on the Medicare for All caucus, you just have to go to Jaya Paul's Representative Jaya Paul's campaign website, because she has all of the caucus members listed there. So if you're in a conservative district, then you just have to choose the right ask. And that's the last thing I'm going to be talking about, which is how to choose an ask. So the question is going to depend on where they are on our ladder of, from hostile to champion of Medicare for All. So if they are not a co-sponsor, but they kind of should be, like so many of our Democratic reps, that's easy. The question is going to be, will you co-sponsor HR 1384? If they are already a co-sponsor, there's still more asks you can use beyond co-sponsorship. So the next thing to ask them, I would think a really easy ask, and it should be like a no-brainer for all of them, is will they join the Medicare for All caucus? And again, you can find whether or not, you can do a little bit of research beforehand and find out if they're on the caucus before you ask them. And my personal favorite would be like, thank you so much for joining, or thank you so much for co-sponsoring our Medicare for All legislation. Now that you're on the bill, will you pledge to stop taking money from insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies? And I think that that's like, because a lot of our co-sponsors in Congress, they support it, but grudgingly, or their support is sort of thin. And the next level for us is going to be like deepening that support and making sure that they're really on our side, and that there's not going to be anything pulling them the other way when the hard decisions about making a floor vote or whatever comes around. So I think that those next level asks are still important for even if your rep is a co-sponsor. And then, of course, for the hostile district, I would love to hear, if anybody in the chat wants to say, like, any experiences they've had with bird dogging conservatives for Medicare for All, or for any sort of like tangential questions they've asked, and like what sort of response they got. I think that'd be really interesting to hear. And I'll be like an eye on the chat to see if any answers have come in on that. Okay. So the sample asks, again, really easy, like, will you co-sponsor HR 1384? Will you pledge not to take any money? Will you join the Medicare for All caucus? The most important thing that I want to communicate about the ask is just that it needs to be a yes or no question. I've had so many people who have gone out and said, like, to their reps, well, do you support single payer? And representatives love that question, because they can say, yes, I totally support single payer, but they don't necessarily want to actually get on the bill or do anything for single payer. So you want to ask them a very direct, pointed question about a piece of legislation, not necessarily about their support or how they feel. Okay. And then I think this is my last slide. Let's see. Okay, yeah, what are the ingredients of a good question? So the ask is just like one part of the question, right? What you want to start with is something personal about you. So how many people have ever been in a room and somebody raised their hand and started talking about how we spend 18% of GDP on healthcare, and how all other countries have it, but we don't, and how they spend more, and all that stuff. I think that you have all heard that, and probably all had the same experience of like totally zoning out, because I cannot hear that policy talk one more time. One of the things that is so important about when you're talking to your rep is that they can argue with you over like policy facts, but they really can't argue with you about your personal experiences. So if you say like, and it doesn't have to be like, I almost died of an asthma attack or something, and that's why you should, people feel like when they share their story, it has to be like something really dramatic. It can just be like your struggles with paying off your, premiums your rising premiums, or meeting your deductible, or having to choose this over that, or whatever. I mean, you can sort of talk about like why this matters to you personally, and you can bring your friends, you can bring experiences with your family in, and I think that part should take about 30 seconds at most. And then you ask a question that puts them on the spot, and that's the ask. So if you got those two things, then you're good. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to Vinay.
All right, can everyone hear me? I think people can hear me. So we're going to talk about how to bird dog. As I said, I work with CPD, and we also work with Housing Works on Bird Dog Nation, and we bird dog all across the country. And so we kind of talk through the purpose of it and how it's useful, but I'm going to walk through some kind of concrete tips for how to do it well, and like how we can support you as you do it well. So I think we can go to the next slide and get started. So the first thing you need to do is get a crew. This is incredibly important. Bird dogging is definitely something you can, CPD is the Center for Popular Democracy, for Noah, who's asking. Thank you for asking. So get a crew. You can do it alone if you want, but as we'll see soon, part of bird dogging is you don't just want to educate the people in the room. You want to post on social media. You want to educate as many people as you possibly can. You want to interact with the candidate. And the best way to do that is to come with more than one person. And so ideally you'll have someone who can film you as you're talking, and then you can use that video in various ways after. And also it'd be ideal to get like 3, 5, 7 people in the room. So even if you do get that first question in, you can keep going. I think one of the kind of misunderstandings people have is if you get the event and ask your question and you get the question and the candidate answers, then you're done. You can call it a day. You did what you were supposed to do. And that's not actually true, because if you have a crew of 3 to 5 people, you can keep asking this slightly different questions, slightly different angles on the same issue. If you get your question and the candidate kind of dodges it, gives you a bad answer about why they don't think Medicare for all is possible, your crew member can back you up, get their question in, and say, I want to talk more about Medicare for all. I actually do think it is cost effective, and I'd like you to talk about it more. So you can kind of keep hitting them from different angles. So it's best to do that with a crew. It's also just great for morale. Some people get nervous when they're asking questions or going to candidate events. You're surrounded by people. It's always great to do it with a crew. So that's the first thing you got to do. And then you can find a location. There's a website called townhallproject.com, which is a great resource. Maybe we can put that in the chat. Right now, it's not too hard to find bird dogging opportunities because we are in the thick of election season. You can do that on the presidential level. I actually spend my weekends in New Hampshire bird dogging right now for at least one more week. Iowa, I guess, is only a couple days left, and then they'll move on to other states. But even just in the congressional level, if you go to townhallproject. I think it's .com, not .org. I forgot what I said earlier. You can check there. And also, we can help you. If you are interested in bird dogging, first of all, if you can get like 15 people together, we will come to wherever you are in the country and do a bird dog training. It's also easy to do them online, as you can see through these webinars. But if you can get people together, if you want a bird dog, we will come to you. If you need help finding an event, we can do that with you. And if you need help drafting questions and talking about how strategically the best questions to draft, we can do that with you as well. And by we, I again mean the Center for Popular Democracy and Housing Works, which combine together to form Bird Dog Nation. We'd love to help you bird dog on your issues across the country. So that's the next step. And then you want to show up early. For the New Hampshire events, I usually try to get there about an hour ahead of time. Different candidates have different approaches to taking questions, but some of them do it straight up like town hall style, and they kind of just call on you and you raise your hand. And for that, you want to get there early. You want to get in the front seats. It's good to scope out the room. As you work with your crew, it's often good to spread out in the room and kind of increase your chances of getting called on. Also, if you're all clumped together, it's kind of obvious, it might be obvious that you're together and all talking about the same issue. So it's kind of better to make it appear more organic, and that, everyone in the room wants to hear about Medicare for all, which, I hope is true for whatever room you're in, because that's what we should be talking about right now. I think that's all I need to say about that. Okay, this seems incredibly basic. I don't have video of all of you. I wish I could see you right now. Usually when we do these trainings, we actually practice raising your hand. It's amazing if they're doing it town hall style, they ask for questions. People will kind of lazily raise your hands. Everyone who does our trainings will just shoot their hands up. Like the first ones, they'll inch up in their seats, stand really tall, and raise their hands, and they get called on all the time. Like we get questions over and over again. It's a very simple thing. It sounds silly to even tell you to raise your hand quickly, but just please keep this in mind. When you're in these town hall events, just please raise your hand very quickly, stand up straight in your chair, and you'll be surprised how quickly you'll get called on. It's pretty obvious when they're about to start taking questions. They'll say that, we're going to take questions soon. So just put your hand up. Like you'll be the first one up. If you're going to an event not to bird dog, you're probably not going to be doing that. So it's not too hard to get your question in, especially if you have a big crew. And again, in terms of the plan, it's good to plan your questions before you get there. Again, we kind of laid out, you want to start with a personal story, then you want to ask a concrete question about your issue. And it's good that everyone in your crew knows what the question is. They know what the second question is, if they know what the third question is, and they know to piggyback off each other. And that's the kind of plan. And it's really ideal to record videos of these bird dogging videos. I think some of you may have seen the videos we've done in the past. Some of them kind of go viral. Some of them definitely affect the narrative on whatever issue you're bird dogging on. And it's possible to do that without a video. But I will say, even if you're in a situation where you can't get a video, I do still think it's worth bird dogging. I could tell a quick story about that. So I've bird dogged Senator Warren a couple times in New Hampshire, and they do a selfie line where they take your phone from you and they just take still pictures. So it's impossible to get a video of you bird dogging her right now in New Hampshire. So I've talked to her multiple times, and at first I thought, I don't know if this is useful, but on the third time I talked to her, again, we didn't record any of this, but she put our talking points into her stump speech that day and tweeted out about the conversation I had with her and repeated those talking points in the debate later on. And that was about environmental issues. So even if you can't record it, it's still very useful. It's always useful to talk to the people who make decisions, the people in power. It's always useful to get in their ear. So don't be discouraged if you are alone at an event. You should still go and talk to your representatives always. But ideally, we can record it, and we can use that strategically to kind of change the narrative on these issues. And then, so afterwards, especially at the big presidential events, there will definitely be media everywhere. And if you get a question in, they'll often want to talk to you. If you don't get a question in, you can still seek them out, and they will talk to you. The key here is to answer the question you wish they had asked you. If they ask you a question, kind of a vague question about healthcare, you say, no, what I want to talk about is Medicare for all. Don't just feel compelled to answer exactly what they ask you. If you're there to talk about specific sound bites, make sure you get those in. Make sure you wish they had asked the perfect question and just ask that and answer that. So talk about Medicare for all and all the complexities you want to, and make sure you get that message out. If you're doing local events, the press will often want to talk to people who are local, especially when I'm in New Hampshire, they want to talk to New Hampshire voters. So if you have a personal story, if you're at your local event, definitely seek out the media. Tell them why you're here. Tell them why you think this is important. If you're at that event and you think Medicare for all is important, that means so many other people think it's important too, and they couldn't make it to the event. So you're representing all of them. So make sure you get that message out as far as you can. And then make sure you don't do this in a vacuum. If you get valuable intel, you want to tell everyone in your crew. You want to report back to whoever your organizers are. So we usually put it into like a spreadsheet. We kind of keep notes on what they say on what event. So if you get an interaction with Warren on Monday and you see her again on Wednesday, you can say like, hey, on Monday you said X, and how do you feel about that now? That's kind of how I, kept talking to her. So if you don't have a history of these conversations, it's kind of hard to know what to ask or what's useful. And if you're getting, terrible responses to certain questions, it might be useful to retool it, ask it in a different way, ask it in a gentler way, or maybe, use the fact that they're refusing to ask it and be like, okay, like you refuse to talk about this. Why do you refuse to talk about this? So all your tactics kind of depend on what they've said. So definitely report back to the group and kind of use that to strategize going forward. And I think we have a video to watch.
Oh yeah. Do you still have the URL for that? Send it to me or send it in the chat, then I can pull it up.
Did I email it to you that day?
Did. My email is like hard to access right now.
Okay, 1 second, everybody.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. Actually, while we're looking for that, let me go ahead and I'll just show the video that we have.
I got the link.
Okay.
All right, I'm putting it in the chat right now.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah. Should have got it.
Let's just do that then.
C-SPAN, your unfiltered view of government, created by cable in
Can y'all see it?
1979.
Hear it. I don't think
talking about the truth. That's refreshing, and I was especially happy to hear you talking about Medicare for all. I want to tell you, I have a 14-year-old son who has a life-threatening disability, and he requires medication that he carries with him everywhere he goes all the time, and has since he was 2 and will for the rest of his life. And we've had the experience of drug companies raising the prices on that medication to the point where families who need it for their child's survival can't afford it. And so I'm wondering if you would consider co-sponsoring Senate Bill 102, the drug company pricing bill that will protect consumers from drug companies doing exactly this and abusing their monopolies by taking patents away from drug companies when they exploit their consumers in this way, and particularly when they charge Americans 10 times more than they're charging people in other countries for the exact same medication, because it would make me feel safer for my son in this country.
Thank you. I think I'm on that legislation. I know I've been supportive of that effort in the past, so I can check specifically on that piece of legislation. But first of all, thank you for having the courage to tell your story. I think more people need to understand and see.
Was that the end, Renee?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It seems like people could hear the video but not see it. Sorry about that. Maybe
Oh no, I'm sorry.
You can send a link so you can watch.
Yeah.
So you heard it was a question about drug pricing, and what I really like about that bird-dogging interaction is that it's my friend Ali. She started with a very personal story, talked about her children in a way that it's kind of impossible not to feel a connection to when you have that story. And then she made a very concrete ask, which was it was Senator Kamala Harris, by the way, asking her to join specific legislation to combat high drug prices. And I think that kind of illustrates an important idea that we talked about earlier, but it's worth reiterating, which is that lots of people kind of feel nervous bird dogging. They feel nervous talking to representatives, especially at the presidential level, because they kind of feel like, well, I don't know if I know enough about the law or about the policy, about the wonky kind of intricacies of it. And that's not really what bird dogging is about. What it's about is your personal story, and we all have that. Everyone has a personal story here, especially if you're on this webinar. That means you care enough about this that you are invested. So you have a personal story about healthcare that matters. So that's what you want to sell, and that's what you want to start with. And then you just want to make sure you have a specific ask, and the ask there was to join legislation. And this summer in Iowa, we were doing presidential bird dogging, and we had many interactions that were very similar to the video that we just played, where it was people telling personal stories about opioids and then asking presidential candidates to support the CARE Act, which is a $100 billion investment in combating the opioid epidemic. And when we started this work in Iowa, pretty much no one had heard of the CARE Act. No one knew what it was. None of these candidates knew. And by the end of the summer, they had all signed on. Every single one is now a co-sponsor of the CARE Act. And that was through bird dogging. And it's just through telling personal stories and repeatedly making that ask. And just basically the thinking was, every time this candidate appears at an event, they're going to get this question. Wherever they go, we're going to tell them to join the CARE Act. And it worked. And that's just a success story and an example of how it can work. And I hope we can do that with Medicare for All. I like to think that we can. I think we can build this movement and employ bird dogging as a tactic to have that same sort of success and get people on these bills. Just thinking if there's anything else I wanted to say about that video. I think that was it. Did we want to move to the next slide?
Okay, great. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys are seeing the slide in a really like weird corner here, but.
So this is kind of a review slide. These are the things we went together. You want to get to an event, we will help find you an event if you need help. Get a crew together, kind of make a plan for what the questions will be. Oh, about that, one more thing I forgot to say is when you're deciding to put your plan together and make questions, another big kind of misstep people make sometimes is, I mean, there is no shortage of things to be angry about right now in this country. There's no shortage of issues that need our work. But don't try to address all of those issues in one town hall. If you go and you bird dog on 5 different issues and you get called on 5 times and ask 5 different questions, you're not really going to move the needle on any of those issues. It's just going to be 5 disparate questions. But if you ask 5 questions about Medicare for All, then that candidate is going to know, okay, I need to be better on Medicare for All. I need to have better answers. I need to be ready for this. And all of these presidential candidates, I'm not sure if all congressional candidates do, but I know on the presidential level, there is always a staff member whose sole job is to record how many times each issue comes up for questions. So they'll say like, oh, we got 5 Medicare for All questions and only 1 immigration question. Let's make sure we're better prepared next time. And then they'll go back, they'll revise their talking points. So what you want to do at an event is focus on 1 or maybe 2 issues and just prepare different ways you can tackle it. And that's like a big kind of strategic part of your plan. And I guess, I imagine we're all here talking about Medicare for All. So, I mean, hopefully when you go to your town hall, just focus on that. Don't talk about Medicare for All and immigration and family separation. Just talk about Medicare for All, and you can help move the needle. And think of it as placing like multiple little stones on a scale, and over time the scale moves. And that's kind of what we're doing. So that's the plan. Get there early, get good seats, put your hands up really quick. After, lots of them have selfie lines where you can get a handshake in. If you don't get called on, you can go up to them, shake their hand, ask a question, and have your buddy videotape it, and that's bird dogging also. So don't be dismayed if you don't get a question, just try to meet them after. You can go to the rope line, they usually stop and take pictures and talk to you. So that's another opportunity to bird dog. And then make sure you report out to your team. And then good questions contain the answer, like for example, will you join the CARE Act? The answer is right there, that's a yes or no. Yes, I will, no, I won't. If they say no, then the next person should be like, I'm sorry, why wouldn't you join the CARE Act? It does all these things. Like, just keep hitting them hard. Powerful personal story. I think we all have that. So thank you all for being on this webinar. I know you have powerful stories to tell, and if you feel comfortable telling them, you can really make quite a big difference doing so. And then you want to have an ask in there. The example I used was to support legislation. I think that's probably what we're going to be doing here for the Medicare for All. We went through specific asks earlier. And yeah, it doesn't have to be technical language. It doesn't have to use jargon. Just talk. Just tell your story. We all have, you know your story better than the candidate does. You know your story better than anyone else does. So you're all experts in that field, right? In your own field, your own personal field. So just know that going in, know that you can tell your story, and I think you can do really well.
All right, thank you so much. So I think we should just do some Q&A now. And I've noticed that someone has asked, I'd like to make sure bird dogging doesn't have to be combative to be successful. And there's already some good conversation happening around that in the chat. And I totally agree with Stefan, who's saying, bird dogging should not be combative. You want to be asking politely but firmly. You don't really want to, you're not there just to, humiliate them or to call them out on like their bad positions. I mean, I think that that's something that, it's tempting to do because we do have strong feelings about some of the reps that we we bird dog, but I think that it works better if you kind of help to get the audience on your side first. So when I bird dogged Markey about signing on to the Senate Medicare for All bill, I said, I started with saying, thank you so much for, you know, as a rep, you signed on to the Medicare for All bill, and you were one of the first to sign on to this bill. And now I would like to ask for you to sign on to the Senate version as a senator, to sign on to that version of the bill. And what happened was, after I'd asked, or after I had stated my gratitude that he had signed on as a rep, the audience cheered, and that sort of indicated to him that they wanted him to sign on to the next bill, right? So you're kind of like setting up, not only are you're sort of setting up a good relationship with the candidate at first, and you're also demonstrating to him that the audience is on your side here. So if you can sort of like craft a question like that, then it sort of helps, because the audience is also going to look at you. If you come out like guns blazing, then you know, the audience is also going to look at you as well, they're not going to look at you, you know, as somebody who supports the rep. And a lot of people who are there, who come to town halls, do support their rep. A lot of people don't too. But yeah, so I think that's a great question. Vinay, do you have anything to say about that?
Not about that in particular. I was going to field another question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I saw someone ask, this is Noah asking, is it worth bird dogging at non-town hall style events? Which events are not worth it? That is a great question, because I think everything I've talked about so far has been about town halls, but most of my bird dogging is actually not at town halls. So in DC, you can just go and find your representative and bird dog them in the hallways, in the Senate hallways. You can do it in the tunnels underground where they move from meeting to meeting. You can basically just like look up their Senate meetings. Maybe this is not exactly what we're going to do. Maybe it's a little off topic, but you can look up their Senate hearings and you can just meet them outside and bird dog them in the hallways. We've bird dogged people in airports, because you can kind of, there are ways you can figure out when they're getting off their planes. Very famously, one of my bosses, Ana Maria Ochila, bird dogged Jeff Flake in an elevator during the Kavanaugh hearings, and demanded that he look her in the eyes, and we eventually got a FBI investigation from that bird dogging. So there are lots of places you can bird dog, and again, back to events, even if it's not a town hall, you can still get candidates on the rope line, you can still get them in a selfie line, you can still get them afterwards when they're being social and taking pictures. So it doesn't just have to be a town hall. There are plenty of opportunities to interact with candidates and representatives.
That's great. I'm sorry, I wonder if I'm missing any. Let's see.
Definitely be persistent, Jeffrey. Thank you for saying that.
So our rep, Walter, is saying our rep is in the Medicare for All caucus, but not HR 1384, which is really unusual, I think. He is getting money from the insurance industry. So that's interesting. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Vinay?
Could you say that again? He's on Medicare for All, but
Medicare for All caucus, but not HR 1384. And he's getting money from the insurance industry. I mean, I feel like maybe, you know, bird dogging him about and taking insurance industry money. And again, you know, that might feel combative, but, you know, a way of saying it is like, already these other reps have made commitments. So right now that we're in the primary season, a lot of reps are actually joining these pledges and returning money that they've gotten. So for example, Joe Kennedy and Ed Markey in my state, in Massachusetts, they've both already returned donations from the fossil fuel industry, and they've also taken pledges to not take any PAC money. So you can talk about, like, in your state, if there are other reps who have taken pledges to do such a thing, you can ask them to stop that, to sort of join that rep and, you know, not taking that money, or join the rep and, you know, joining the Medicare for All caucus, or joining the Medicare for All bill. You know?
Yeah, what someone is asking, what if the audience takes the representative side instead of yours? Any recommendations? It is interesting to think about the audience, because I like to think that when you're bird dogging, especially at a town hall, you're not just talking to the candidate, you're talking to everyone in the room. And if you're asking a great question, then you're educating everyone in the room. So I like to think that at these events, we're going to be educating a lot of people. I guess on Medicare for All, one thing that might come up is that even amongst Democrats, it's, you know, a contentious issue, and some people think it's impossible and we can't pay for it and all those things. I think it's still worth doing that work. It might be a little uncomfortable, but it's still worth educating the people in that room, especially on Medicare for All. I think one of the biggest myths is that we can't afford it. And in truth, it's actually cost saving. It actually would save us money to do Medicare for All. So if walking into a room and facing some people who maybe come back at you for that, it might be a little uncomfortable, but I think it's still worth it. So I would encourage you to still make those decisions and still make your points. And I don't think it's going to get to a point where it's too uncomfortable, because as we said before, bird dogging is not combative. It's not a protest. You're not doing civil disobedience. You're just asking your representatives questions. So in most situations, it shouldn't escalate to a point that's too uncomfortable.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I do feel like a lot of groups are hesitant about bird dogging because they do think it makes them seem combative. But I think it's very fair to ask your rep to sign on to legislation that they haven't signed on to. It's I think it's not really, even though it does put them on the spot, and I think that it's completely fair to ask. So. Somebody's saying, I live in East Bay where all the reps signed on to M4A, but we have Pelosi across the bridge and a shoe on the Lower Peninsula. Yeah, those are two very important reps. And this person is saying they're entrenched. Any ideas? I guess I do think that maybe like this is where we sort of come up against the limits of bird dogging, because most people know Pelosi, like getting Pelosi on camera saying that she doesn't support Medicare for All isn't going to be a huge revelation to anybody, like it would be for some reps who have like a more progressive reputation than they actually back it up with. And so I think that different tactics are going to be necessary there, and building power in her constituency is going to be, speaking specifically about Pelosi, but this also applies to issue, I think, is going to be essential, and probably also coalitions. I would definitely look up who are her major donors, not just donors, but who is her base of support, who does she go to like turn out votes for her, and try to sort of make relationships with those groups.
I see lots of people are asking kind of a technical question about whether this is being recorded. I believe it is, and is it available? Is there easy way for them to access that?
Yes, I will be posting it after this, so.
Great.
I'll probably share it with the whole list. So.
Great.
Let's take a couple more. Okay, so yeah, absolutely. So Open Secrets is actually not, someone's asking, besides Open Secrets, where else can we find out where polls are getting their funding? Open Secrets is good, but it's not actually the best. The best is the original FEC filings, which you can get. You know what, I'll look it up and then I'll send the link in the chat. But if you go to like the source, they have to actually disclose all of it. And there's like, you can get a CSV file of all of their donations, and you can sort it by amount and name and all that stuff. And you can find out which unions and organizations are giving to them.
Someone's asking, Noah's asking, what do you do when politicians don't have public events and you don't live in DC? Well, they should have a local office that you can go to, and you can speak to a staffer there. You can speak to a legislative staffer, a healthcare staffer on Medicare for All. And you can generally either make that meeting ahead of time, or you can kind of just pop in for a pop-in visit. If that's also not particularly feasible in terms of accessibility or mobility or transportation, you can write emails, you can make calls, you can fundraise for other people who can do in-person visits. That's actually incredibly important. So much of the work we do going to DC bird dogging is based on just grassroots fundraising, just sending out links, just sharing with our community, building people power. So that's actually a huge contribution you can make if you can't be there in person yourself. You can help get someone else there.
Great. Okay, well, we're coming to the end here. I don't even think I need to bother putting up the last slide. But just to finish us out, I just want everybody to, everybody who has made a commitment to bird dog their rep, to just say that they will do so, and what rep they're going to bird dog, and what question they're going to ask them. If you could put that in the chat. And Vinay, if you want to share like any of your like contact information or how to like get in touch with CPD.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'm going to put that in the chat too.
Yeah, so the easiest thing to do would be to join the Bird Dog Nation Facebook page, because we post there every time we have a call, which is the easiest way just to get in touch with all of us. If you're not on Facebook, you want to just reach out to me. I could just, let me type in, yeah, you have my email address, maybe you can put it in the chat. It's vkrishnan@populardemocracy.org. So that's VKRISHNAN@populardemocracy.org. And we'll make sure that's in the chat too. So feel free to just reach out to me, ask me any follow-up questions or how to connect to Facebook or get on our email list. We have lots of ways of contacting you. And again, our big thing we always hammer home is wherever you are in the country, if you can get 15 people in a room, we will come give you another full training. We can do a full like 90-minute training on these issues and help you plan on your local issues and what you want to bird dog on. And again, it's the Bird Dog Nation on Facebook if you want to join on Facebook. And yeah, that is correct.
Okay, great. And for us, you can always email us, and we actually have a whole page where we've just consolidated like all of the bird dogging videos that have been submitted to us. And if you actually, you know, once you get your bird dog video, send it to us and we'll feature it on the page and we'll share it on our networks and everything, and try to get you as many views as possible. And if you want to like get more involved with healthcare now, or you want more help with either developing a bird dogging campaign, or you're stuck with bird dogging and but you want to move your legislator on Medicare for all, and you want to talk to us more about how to do that, we can probably help you strategize. So here's our sign up. So feel free to get in touch with me or to sign up on the sign up page. Let's see. Anything else, Vinay?
I think that's it for me. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for attending and being so participative.
Yeah, this was so great. Thanks everybody. And I'll send out the video to the webinar tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, have a nice night. Good night.